Gentlemen, I'd like to call the January Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee meeting to order. Our first item of business, we need to approve the minutes from our last meeting. I'll call on Vice Chairman Commissioner Gooch. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely excited about this meeting, as we are every year, where we get to host our state legislative delegation at our steering meeting and get to hear from them, ask them a few questions, and hear kind of what they know is coming up in this session this year, and also maybe pose some questions to them they can help us out with. So to the delegation, we are extremely honored to have you here. And if we will just take a minute, I'll start with Senator Ketron and just go down the line, if that's okay, and just spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just any opening thoughts or introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bill Ketron, State Senator for the 13th Senatorial District. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to come back once again, as you have for the last number of years, to allow us to come in and speak to the steering committee. It's very important for our delegation to sit down and go over what we feel like is coming up in the coming session, and make sure that those lines of dialogue are open between us. So we thank you for that opportunity. I had an opportunity to go to the MTSU Vanderbilt game and sit with the state treasurer last week before the holidays. And Treasurer Lillard shared with me something that concerned me, that probably should concern all of us. Is probably the most concerning thing addressing us this year is the budget. And the budget is going to be dictated by TennCare. And the amount of money that it's going to take to supplement TennCare is going to take away from every other department line that we have in the budget. He said that TennCare is just gobbling up everything that we've got. So it's going to be very stressful for us to try to find ways to make sure that all those things that we've done in the past can stay in the budget. So we're going to have to be opening every door, opening every drawer, looking under every rock that we possibly can to find extra money. And I know we've said that every year, but it continues to get worse and worse, especially with TennCare and the amount of money that it's gobbling up. So I think that will dictate and set, I think, the tone from everything that we do, from every issue that we look at. So we'll be working on your behalf to make sure that we don't send any unfunded mandates as possible. I know that's always an issue. Having been a member of this body, that was always an issue that I looked at, was don't send us any more burden down here at the local county level that we have to come up and increase property taxes. So again, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to come and address you this year.
I'd like to piggyback on what Senator Ketron has said, and that's thank you for allowing us to come and speak with you all and answer your questions and just kind of keep in touch with what's going on locally as well as what goes on up in Nashville. The thing I'm focused on this year, as a matter of fact, our entire delegation, Senator Ketron, because it's his district, and as you know, I'm in the 34th district now, the southwestern part of Rutherford County, and that's a sewer system at Eagleville. I spent about an hour today on the phone working with USDA and the rural development on trying to get some of their rules straight. They tend to change from one day to the next. So, yeah. Anyway, that is what we're going to be working on as a delegation, me particularly, and working very closely with Mayor Thune and the City Council. And we were going to ask you for the CDBG grant this year, Rutherford County, to go to Eagleville. But that has been postponed, at least till the following year. I think you all are going to be looking at pump trucks instead. But we are still going to be looking and needing that grant the following year, so we would appreciate your support and help with that.
Thank you, Chairman and Commission committee members. Appreciate you having us. State Representative Joe Carr, 48th Legislative District, eastern half of Rutherford County. Not sure what's on the agenda tonight, but I can expect that all of us will speak honestly and forthrightly about your concerns. I share Senator Ketron's remarks that we've got a very challenging year in front of us. Just to put some numbers, a little bit of numbers behind what Senator Ketron was talking about with the treasurer, and these numbers changed a little bit, but we've got about a $369 million surplus according to the last report. And of that $369 million, it appears that $350 million of it's going to get eaten up by TennCare. So we have got some significant obstacles in the Tennessee General Assembly in front of us, and that in an uncertain economy. And we will certainly do our best to make sure that we don't move any unfunded mandates. You have my pledge in that regard, and I certainly expect, and I'm sure I will hear from you, as we all will, if you see us moving in that direction. Thank you for having us, and again, we look forward to having this dialogue. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dawn White, newly elected, District 37, and I'm honored to be here. The gentlemen I'm serving with up here have been wonderful. They've been so helpful, and I feel the same way. I feel very blessed to get to work with such a wonderful county commission. And for those who've been around for a while, my claim to fame is I'm Big T's daughter.
Glad to be here. Mike Sparks, represent 49th District, Smyrna, Laverne, North Murfreesboro. Sitting in my old seat, by the way, and appreciate the good job that y'all are doing. And you know, there's a lot of challenges out there. Bill spoke, or Senator Ketron spoke to a lot of them about the budget. But you know, one thing that I had seen the comptroller's report to the day, and I'm sure the other representatives seen the same thing, and it was stating where the counties accumulated of the 95 counties spent about $490 million more than they took in last year. If my numbers, I met with 2 assistants on this, and you know, I had a good opportunity to have lunch with the governor, Representative Carr, myself did, and you know, corrections is a big issue for me. The drug problem is a big issue for me because I know the taxpayers cannot continue to fund at the levels we've been funding. Just a case in point with the comptroller's report here, county debt increased almost $1.4 billion from 07 to 2011, and you know, what we're facing as a county, as a state, as a country, when it comes to the drug problem and the issues that it's costing the taxpayers, because we can't continue to fund to house these things. And you know, I was glad to hear the governor said, Mike, he said our budget's going to increase about $40-something million next year, state budget, $40-something million for corrections. And I was kind of relaying it back to the counties, that the counties can, I mean, I know sitting in this seat that I've sat in, you can't go back to the taxpayers and continue to raise taxes to pay for these things, whether they're mandates or whether there are other needs that you have. And we're living in some times that are just really kind of frightening sometimes. And you know, we're leaving a generation with nothing but more debt, and that's not trying to be preachy, but it's just the fact that we're seeing. And along with Bill, because he sat here too, he sat in y'all's position and see the needs that you see. And y'all are forced to build schools. You're forced to house inmates, and you're forced to pay for a lot of these things. And sometimes the state is guilty of passing some of those costs on to y'all. I don't want to be guilty of that. You know, we pass laws up here in Nashville, and we don't think about the fiscal impact that it costs the counties. You know, one thing I'm glad that Senators Ketron and Tracy, you know, have served at the local level. They understand the needs that y'all face, and I know that these other representatives do too. Any way I can ever be of assistance, you know, y'all know you can always call upon me, but just want to hear what y'all's concerns are tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator and Representatives, for those words. I'd also like to recognize that Commissioner Ely, Commissioner Serino, and Commissioner Schaefer are in the audience as well as our County Mayor Burgess and County Finance Director Lisa Nolan. And as the time permits, and if there are any questions, I'm sure the committee wouldn't mind suspending the rules if any commissioners have any questions they'd like to ask our delegation. So with that, to the committee, do we have anybody like to start us off asking any questions to the delegation? Commissioner Gooch?
Representative Sparks and you guys on the fighting the drug paraphernalia in our local markets. If we can get rid of that, that'll be great. Many of you, some of you spoke about TennCare is going to be a big part of our budget. How would the Unwanted, Unaffordable Health Care Act relate to TennCare? And then also, how would that relate to any responsibilities that the counties would be responsible for, if any?
Well, Commissioner, I'm sure everybody's going to want to comment on this, but the real answer is we don't really know. The last time we heard, a little more than a third, but certainly quite a bit less than half of the rules for the Affordable Care Act had even been promulgated. Moreover, what we're finding out, which is why the governor waited so long to make a determination about whether or not to establish a state health care exchange or whether to allow the federal government to establish that health care exchange. The challenge we have is that we've got to make a decision as a state, and then the county's got to make a subsequent decision based on rules that haven't even been promulgated yet or established. Unfortunately, in addition to that, when Congress passed the Affordable Care Act, they gave Secretary Kathleen Sebelius of Health and Human Services complete authority, including legislative authority, to rewrite the law in the form of rulemaking. And what we're seeing is that as the rules are being promulgated, they're rewriting the rules again. So the states, in effect, are always behind the curve in being able to understand how the law is going to impact us. The short answer is we don't really know, and I don't think any of us are trying to be evasive or obtuse, but it is the biggest challenge, because the next thing we got in front of us is what do we do about expansion of Medicaid or TennCare, and so we've got a mess, if you want to know the truth about it. So.
Is that why many governors and states are letting the federal government run it, because no one's really read or understand the law that keeps changing? Commissioner,
from what I understand, that is one of the biggest reasons, is because it keeps moving, and because, quite honestly, Washington literally doesn't know. I know that our insurance commissioner, Julie McPeak, has been on the phone up there many times, as well as Darren Gordon, who heads TennCare. They can't get straight answers, or the answers change. So it makes it extremely challenging if we're going to make sound financial decisions if Washington doesn't know. The problem that we have that compounds the issue, and then I'll hush, is that we're required to balance our budget. Washington hadn't had a balanced budget in 3 or 4 years. Moreover, they just can print the money. We don't have that luxury down here. And so they literally have pushed a huge problem onto us. And I'll let some others comment. Thank you.
Commissioner, let me add to that, too. Had we signed on and set up our own state exchange, as Representative Carr said, first of all, they've only promulgated less than a third of the rules. We don't know what you're signing on to something that you don't even know what you're getting into. So it's their mess. Let them do it. Let them set it up. Let them create it. The beautiful thing is, if this is such a great deal and such a great idea, 5, 10, 25 years from now, we can set up our own exchange. We don't have to do it today. If we do it today, then we're locked into the current third of the rules plus the next 2/3 of the rules that they decide to make up and change as they go along. The problem they're having is when they pass the law, you got to pass it to find out what's in it. Well, they forgot to put the fact in, they didn't count on the Supreme Court ruling unconstitutional that states had to set up the state exchanges. They did not allocate the funding or the authority to even come into the states and set it up. So they're trying to write the rules, and there's a fight going on in Congress over who has that authority. Sebelius a month ago went to Congress and asked for $200 million to come in and start setting up the exchanges. They don't even have the money to set them up. So right now, we don't have a state exchange, and we're not going to have a federal exchange. If we did set up the state exchange, another disadvantage was you're looking at the Medicaid rolls tripling overnight. We would immediately be responsible for that. So that was another reason we did not want to sign up and have our own state-run exchange, because you 330,000 right off the bat added to the TennCare rolls. So yeah, it's a mess. We don't know where it's going, but we do know we've said no to some of the things that they're trying to implement.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Womack talked about the core in their decision about the individual mandate requiring citizens to make that purchase of health insurance, but the court also struck down the portion that would have punished the states for not expanding eligibility of the Medicaid rolls. So the result of that decision is that Congress can deny expansion funds to the state, but cannot cut Medicaid for states which do not increase the rolls. The Kaiser report just recently came out with their Foundation Commission on Medicaid, said that Tennessee will see an increase of 331,000 by 2019, or 29.9%, with 246 of those being previously uninsured under the level of expansion. So the report projects new spending for the state would be $716 million on the low side and $1.5 billion on the high side. They kind of refer to it as the woodwork effect, is that there's a lot of people out there who are uninsured, but once it becomes mandatory, folks will come out of the woodwork and automatically enroll to get on those rolls for the Medicaid expansion. So that's the issue of, okay, where's the money going to come from to pay for that Medicaid? And how much do we expend, and where do we get the money to do that from? So that woodwork effect is, we're facing that. And I don't know if you saw this, but just a couple of weeks ago, right before Christmas, the architect for Obamacare, she was the main architect in Washington, stepped down and resigned her position in the White House and went to work in the private sector for Johnson & Johnson. So we're into a program of the main designer or the architect leaving. So where does that leave us? You know, from the election up until the middle of December, there were 222 pages of new rules that came out. And that's where the governor had such a hard time in making that decision of whether to join the exchange or not. And once those rules came out from the election, the 1st of November, until the time that he made the decision, all those new rules of those 222 pages, he couldn't get answers for, because it's all open-ended and it's just kind of make it up as you go. So that's why he opted not to go with the exchange, because he didn't know what we were getting into. So it's like the other representatives have said, Carr and Womack both, we're going into something blind and not knowing where we're headed. So it's really hard, Commissioner, to try to navigate into something where you got blinders on.
And it's funny that you brought the Obamacare thing up. In the Washington Post today, I get clippings sometimes on news articles across the state. You know, in Washington Post today on about Obamacare and this new law that was passed for the fiscal cliff, it actually talked about in the paper today, it's taken out $1.9 billion, and it's even changed as of here lately, just because of the new year, as far as the fiscal cliff bill that was passed. So it's, in the last 2 or 3 days, it's changed. But they've taken out $1.9 billion in the article today. It talked about.
The funny thing about, when they first passed this, is only going to cost $989 billion. It's right now, today's cost is up to $1.7 trillion, and they're estimating to go to $2.4 trillion by 2016. It's going to triple inside of the next 3 to 4 years. So they have no clue what they're doing. They don't have the money for this, and it's going to come to a head. Congress is going to have to do something about it, because the money's not going to be there, and you have right now 25 states who are refusing to participate. That means 25 federal exchanges they're going to have to set up. They don't have the money for it. It's going to be at least $250 million per exchange to set it up federally. Multiply that times 25. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, hopefully you're not just going to throw money toward TennCare, because just throwing money is not going to fix it. It's never fixed anything. You got to have a solution. So I know y'all will do the right thing up there, and we appreciate y'all working hard for us. Vouchers. I don't know anything about it, but it scares me from what I am hearing about it. I don't know, is that something that's on the table, that's already approved or done or not approved, but we have the opportunity. I see a big price tag on that locally, and where are we on that? And if you could fill me in.
Commissioner Sandlin, I've been a little bit a part of that discussion. The voucher issue is coming out of a distressed situation in Shelby County, Memphis. I think there's
or the state's been throwing money at Shelby County for years.
Yes, sir. And I would imagine, yes, sir.
And it hasn't worked still.
You're right. We've been throwing a lot of money at it over the years. The challenge is we're looking at a huge societal, cultural, educational element there, okay? That's unlike what we experience here in Rutherford County. Back to the voucher question, because it stems from that.
Yeah.
And as a result of all of that, which is somewhat systemic in Memphis, because you've got a lot of people, especially those with wealth, leaving the city and moving out into the suburbs of the county. And so it exaggerates the problem, exacerbates the problem, makes it worse. On the voucher question, so we've got, and the reason I can speak to this a little bit is because I got a sister-in-law who teaches in the inner city schools of Memphis. And in some places, it's almost like a war zone down there. I mean, she teaches in a school that's fenced in, okay? The doors are locked, and the gang situation down there is horrendous. So the quality of education in some instances is almost non-existent. So what they're trying to do is create an opportunity or choice for those kids and those parents who want to give those students a way out, because the schools in some cases are so bad it traps the students, and it's a cycle. And so they're trying to give them options. The proposal that's on the table is to give Memphis, or the four urban areas, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga, those options. And the idea is that it will help. The concern I have is that we're once again, the state's involved in a solution, educational solution, like we are in so many other solutions, about trying to solve a problem in one end of the state when the problem doesn't exist in another part of the state. Yeah, it doesn't exist. We don't have that problem here. So what we do by fixing that over there is we create two problems over here. And that's what kind of concerns me about this. Because I'll tell you, I'm all about parental choice, I'm about options, and I'm about competition. But not if it unwinds what's going on that's good about what we're already doing. So we have to be careful, extremely careful as a state, and I will be because I sit on the Education Committee, about solving that problem but creating two problems here. What I would be very interested in looking at is a permissive situation where it allows the LEA or the county governing body the option to implement a voucher system if they so choose. So we basically create a set of standards or criteria by which a voucher system exists, and then if the LEA wanted to adopt those requirements for a voucher system, they could do so. If they didn't, they could also not do so. So it would be at their choosing. So if the state passes a voucher system, the only way I would look at it is if it were permissive, if that makes sense. So I just think Rutherford County knows best how to educate its children, and I don't want the state to supersede that by trying to solve a problem in Memphis.
I think the governor, it's high on his agenda with vouchers, and he wants to try to shepherd that forward. And like Representative Carr was talking about, Memphis is where the issue actually got started. There's a lawsuit between the county and the city all over education, and they're still in that battle. The biggest concern, I think, for most LEAs is that you end up, the parents will take that voucher and the kids will take that money and go wherever they want to go to school, which in theory I support. However, there's a lot of minutia in between. Because what happens, and the fear I think at the local LEAs is that then you're left with all those who don't have a choice or don't have a place to go. So you've got, they call it the dance of the lemons. So you get the bad teachers and the bad students left because all the rest of them have taken the voucher and gone somewhere else. I serve on the TSSAA board for homeschooling. Homeschooling is a whole other issue. How do you deal with that? How do you deal giving a voucher to a homeschooler? How do you give a voucher to someone with disabilities or special needs, which the special need kids are, it's huge. That hasn't even been considered. So I'm thinking like I said, there's a whole lot of minutia in between. This is just now discussion. There's been talk about just a pilot in Memphis only. I don't think we'll see anything come forward this year. I don't think we'll see anything come forward next year. But the end game is getting a better education for the kids. And what we know is up front is in many school districts, what we're doing now is not working. So we're all looking for ways, and vouchers like the KIPP program, the KIPP school in Nashville is working very well. It's a voucher type charter school. There's several in your more metropolitan areas and your lower income, and you've got people standing in line trying to get into those charter schools. But I think we're several years out from, in my opinion, of seeing anything come before us. And so I think we just keep on doing what we're doing, which is producing good education products here in Rutherford County.
On that note, then, the BEP funding, we have to ask that question every year. So we're not looking at adjusting that, whatever that formula may be. Nobody really knows what that is, but we're not looking at touching that.
Okay, that's not. One other little piece of minutia to add to what Senator Ketron was saying, Commissioner, and that is, I know one of my private schools in my district, they don't want the vouchers, which was a surprise, private Christian school, because then they will fall under state standards, and they don't want the state coming in and telling them how to run their school. So there's a whole lot of different things that are going to affect.
That's what I was talking about. There's a lot of tentacles to just saying vouchers and what that meaning is, and that I don't see any good parts to really any of those. And that's
I don't see how you can work right now. I don't see how you can work any of it out. So it's going to be. I know the governor's pushing it, like Senator Ketron was saying, but I personally am not on board until I just don't see how it's going to work out.
Jordan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might, too, I want to recognize Mr. Bratcher from the Road Board who's present tonight, and thank legislators for being here, and particularly your concern. I'm so glad you mentioned it, Representative Womack, on the Eagle sewer system situation, and I'm absolutely certain, since I've heard you address that before, that you are aware that they are approaching desperate. So, and I'm glad to hear that that's going to be a priority. My concern is one, I really have only one general statement to make, and that is I'm very concerned about the loss of educators, of teacher talent that our school systems are losing really statewide due to early retirements or just retirement in general, transfer out of the classroom for central office jobs or whatever, or just general resignations. And I'm concerned, and I'd like to hear any comments that you might make. Do you see a connection here? And surely you must, but do you see a connection? Are teachers and educators wrong to see a connection between the actions of the state legislature in the last couple of years on educational issues and the fact that this is happening statewide at a rapid rate? And since it's already been brought up, I appreciate your comments on some educational issues. Are there other educational issues that you're aware are going to be brought up in the next few months? I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, Commissioner, thank you. I think with the recent problems and the tragedy in Connecticut, I think that will be an issue that will probably come before the General Assembly, because somebody in the General Assembly, I don't have a bill, but I'm sure somebody's going to discuss that, with some type of legislation to talk about school safety, because it's a concern. It's on the forefront right now, and so that's one issue. I know the governor was going to talk about higher education, but I think he's now taken that off his agenda. TennCare has basically removed all of that. Opportunity scholarships is another area that we're probably looking at. I think a task force that the governor put together to provide equal opportunity scholarships for students will be something that will probably come. College tuition. I know we get hammered all the time about college tuition. It just keeps going up and up, and we're not funding at the state level what we should be, and haven't for quite some time. So the colleges and universities think that they just can pass it on to the students every time that a new semester rolls around, and so I think that's kind of on our radar. I'm not sure what type of legislation will come, but that's the only ones I'm aware of. Representative Carr.
No, I think, Senator, you've got it correct on the initiatives that we all heard about. I'll have a bill that allows permissively for the LEA and the local law enforcement to determine the security needs and how to meet those needs without the state getting in the way. Because just like vouchers, Commissioner Sandlin, while Memphis may think vouchers are a good way to go, that's not something that we necessarily need to adopt here. If it is, it needs to be done and handled at the local level. And so the security needs I would put in that same kind of category. We need to let the locals make those determinations. I do want to go back to, I think, a comment you made, Commissioner Jordan, about, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think you were saying you were somewhat alarmed at the rate that teachers were either retiring or they were leaving the state. And I would really like to see those data points, not to challenge them, but if that then being the case, the state needs to take a strong look at who's leaving, why they're leaving, and are they leaving because the system, because they didn't meet the minimum standards that the children require to get a good education, or was it the actions of the state, which I think you were somewhat implying with legislation recently, that drove them out of an occupation that they were qualified for? We as a legislative body need to take a very close look at that, because that wasn't certainly the intent of any legislation that I was a part of or voted for. But if that is unfortunately an unintended consequence of trying to do something good, we need to take a strong look at that and find out what, in a measurable way, what is that, so we can fix it. And if you can get me those data points, as a House member sits on, and as an officer of the House Education Committee, I will take that very seriously and see what we can do to rectify some of that. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
If y'all send a bill up, in this school situation on safety, I mean, Rutherford County, I think, has done a very good job in the SRO program through the elementary, middle, and high school, and we definitely don't want to shine any light on us, because something can happen at any time. Kid safety is very, very important, but and my prayers have been with those families and everybody in Connecticut there ever since this happened, as well as the nation has been behind them. But you can't help crazy people doing what they do, but you can beef up things. But one thing that I want to caution you is government getting involved and mandating something across the board that local government is trying to take care of themselves. And with this, I think a lot of things are going to happen, and it's going to be good for safety, no doubt.
You're exactly right, and that's why it's imperative that the bill that I'm referencing, that Senator Ketron talked about a second ago, is the fact that the security needs and assessments that need to take place are done at the local level. You guys need to do that, not us. What we've got in place, unfortunately, is a set of state laws that in some respects prohibit you from doing that. We need to step out of the way and allow you to make that risk assessment, and then you determine how you're going to meet that need. I specifically sat down with Superintendent of Schools Don Odom and Sheriff Robert Arnold, and we had a very long and detailed discussion about that. And what I found was that Rutherford County is the leader in this state in the SRO program. We've been doing it since, I think, 1993. We were the first county in the state to do it. So we're way ahead of the curve with regard to student security. What we found out in the process of the Newtown, Connecticut massacre, unfortunately, is that it only takes one crazy to do something horrific. And so it just put us on alert that to review our security measures for our children, and that was what the meeting was about, Commissioner. But thank you again.
Appreciate that, yeah.
Mr. Jordan, I want to just add one thing. I've been really involved in my schools in my district with the teachers. Their biggest complaint has been the teacher evaluation system. They feel like they're bureaucrats. Every time they turn around, they're teaching the test. They're teaching just to get a good score on their evaluations, and there's too many evaluations. We've corrected that to a point, but I've talked with Superintendent Odom. I'm trying to encourage Rutherford County and other counties to get away from this team model. This is a model set up by bureaucrats and a handful of higher education folks out in California. And we've brought it to Tennessee. Versus the Tiger model created by teachers and administrators right here in Tennessee, which Chattanooga and several schools in East Tennessee are using, and they love it. But it costs a little bit more. So, again, it's a local thing. It's a local decision that has to be made by the local school district. And it's unfortunate. I wish we as a state would have taken the Tiger model and implemented that across the state, because that is proven to be a very good evaluation tool for the teachers, and they like it. And you know, you can talk to some of your fellow commissioners here who have teachers or wives who are teachers that have literally left the profession because they've had enough. They can't take constantly being harassed by these evaluation systems. And I think the way it's been implemented by the state education department, they haven't done a very good job with that. So there are things that other things like the Common Core standards that teachers are worried about, but by and large, what I'm hearing is the evaluation system. But that can be corrected here with Rutherford County schools as well as Murfreesboro City schools.
Real quick, Commissioner Jordan, I do hear a lot of complaints, and I do see some teachers that may be leaving. It kind of reminds me of what we complain about government excess regulation on small business. It's almost excess compliance issues on education, you know. And this isn't being critical of TEA, but just where I've sat, I see a disconnect, and I've said this before at the chamber meetings. I've never met the TEA lobbyist. So if you've got a good advocate, good representative, a good lobbyist, shouldn't you know your representatives to influence? I mean, that's what teachers are paying dues for, you know. And it's not being critical. It's just saying I see a disconnect, Commissioner. I know your passion and convictions for education and as well as the rest of the commissioners up here. I just see a big disconnect, and I see the people that are effective of causing effective change, of being a change maker in the positive, are good with influencing, you know, and that may just be a phone call, an email, going and sitting with somebody and having a cup of coffee. I don't see that when it comes to education. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just see a disconnect, and teachers can always call us. I know these folks' hearts, they don't want to make it excessive on teachers. I think government gets too intrusive sometimes. Sometimes we become reactionary to try to make improvements, and oftentimes we don't realize that with this piece of legislation we just passed, there's some ramifications back here that we don't take into account of. I'm always going to look to the school board. I'm always going to look to y'all to see what your thoughts are. I'm not going to go try to invent legislation and try to micromanage and be reactionary on whatever issue it is. I want to hear from what y'all, where y'all sit, because you're closer with the people. The school board's closer with the people. But you know, if you can pass on to your TEA advocate that they're not an effective influencer to me, and I can't speak for these folks, but I hadn't seen it. I see a huge disconnect, Commissioner, and like I say, maybe I'm wrong, but I wish we could hear more from teachers and have a little bit better dialogue and have some effective, positive change and find some solutions, and sometimes get away from a lot of the divisiveness that you often see.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the talk on TennCare and education. By the way, when we started the SRO program here, I think I chaired the committee, and the Combine incident pushed this commission to vote unanimously to do it. But the main reason we did it at that time was because of the bullying and the gangs in the schools. Senator Ketchum will remember precisely that fact. But that was the main reason that we pushed SRO, because of the bullying, the gangs, and the control that we wanted in our school system. And it's worked 100%. It wouldn't take much for us to be 100% now with SRO. But in talking to Senator Ketchum, my biggest issue that I have is the obsolete private acts. Obsolete private acts that you have on the books. Yeah, a good example, a month ago I received a private act dated 1943 on purchasing that they wanted us to do. Rutherford County is approaching, roughly 300,000 people, somewhere in that neighborhood, and we just cannot operate with all these obsolete private acts. So what I want to know, what is the state going to do to alleviate some of these private acts, since we don't have a constitutional convention now, Bill?
Commissioner, those private acts come from the county commission to the General Assembly for passage. We're willing to remove any that you send to us that you don't feel are there. I know some counties are already working on that because they are so convoluted. While I'm on that, let me bring up the Financial Management Act for counties. There was one, I think Chairman Cogg and I discussed it the other day because it's kind of new. The comptroller's been talking about that. There are actually two Financial Management Acts on the books, one passed in 1951 and one passed in 57, and the other one passed in 81. Now, the comptroller has been getting input. I'm not sure if Mayor Burgess has been involved with that. I think he may have. But he's been meeting with state officials across the state, trying to get new information and basically updating those two acts for financial management that are currently on the books. That is not a mandate. It is an option, but giving opportunity for each county to look at the new changes made to those two acts that are on the books.
What would be the upside by going to one of those years on that act?
Well, I think what the comptroller is doing is taking, do we operate under, Lisa? We're under a private act. You still may want to continue under that private act. I think some of your smaller counties operate under the 57 and 81 Financial Management Act. It's something you're just going to have to look at. I'd say your finance committee would take a long, hard look at it and weigh the balance, take the recommendation of your mayor and Ms. Nolan.
I think some concern.
This is going to be the second version that they're putting forward. The first version had any number of comments from mayors and commissions all over the state, and we had a little meeting with the comptroller, and I already told Mr. Schaefer about this, but some of you know him and how funny and humorous he can be. But the first version, which he just floated, we went in and we got all around the big set of tables in a room, and he was over there fiddling around and folding a piece of paper. And he folded this piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, up into an airplane. And he said, this is what we're doing with this first version. Because we had already come there filled with all kinds of difficulties. We'd already explained those to him. He has now prepared a revised version, which is much more reasonable and comprehensive. I don't know what the finance directors are going to say about it, but it's a much more workable process. And the county mayors themselves, the association, are not going to oppose this. They're not going to support it. They think it's reasonable replacement for the 1957 and 81 acts if one chooses and elects to go that direction. So we're not sure if he's really going to try to get a vote on this year or he can get it passed. But he's still floating it out there, and he's very receptive, that whole group is, to comments and feedback on what improvements and changes need to be made.
Well, I think, Mayor, the comptroller is just trying to get us out of the dark ages from 57 and 81. And, you know, back in 81, we didn't even have fax machines, and now we're doing things on iPads. You know, so things have changed dramatically in the way that we operate and do business. The Procurement Act of 2010 that I carried is just now really beginning to come into its full development and the fruition of seeing that come together, and I think you'll be seeing opportunities there by contracts through that Department of General Services that you'll be able to purchase through a statewide contract for counties, making it easier through that Procurement Act. So we're just trying to update, like Commissioner McAdoo was talking about. We've seen things from the 40s and 30s, and you know, we just need to update our books where things are moving at lightning speed today, and we need to be on top of it. And there's no excuses for us because we were elected to do that.
But to the best of your knowledge, at least where it stands today, I know the original act that the comptroller proposed was going to be a mandated act. This one, I believe, is a local option act.
That was the airplane.
Yeah, the airplane. Yeah. But I hope that we can make sure that we can do whatever we can to let it stay as a local option act.
Yeah, it is an option, no mandate.
I want to go back to just one point that Commissioner McAdoo made. These are private acts, Commissioner McAdoo. We are reviewing those. I've had a little meeting about those. There are some that we really need to address ourselves. It'll be our responsibility to take the leadership on that. The unfortunate thing about this book that we've got that lists and prints all the private acts, they have chosen to put all of those in there, even though most of them and many of them have already been superseded, but you have a hard time figuring out which one we're operating under. But CTAS, when they made all these books for all the counties that list all these private acts, they continue to show every one of them and all of the history that took place over many years, and it's confusing. But we're working on that ourselves.
And the state will do whatever we say, right? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, in the budgetary process, we've looked at, we have to throw in the maintenance of effort every now and then. Is that where does maintenance of effort land as far as our rule, or is this state? I was thinking it was a state statute. And, in tough budgetary years, which, I don't know, I think every year's been a tough budgetary year, that, and I understand why it's there. I really do. But, and I don't have the answer, but it needs to be adjusted or tweaked somewhat because I think we're almost forcing, and we have to have our hands on our own departments as well, saying, okay, don't spend everything in your budget. If you still have some monies left over, let's put that back in ending fund balance, and we'll roll it back over, and here comes your new budget, for the next year. And a lot of our departments do that. They do, school board and everybody. But then there's an issue with maintenance of effort that troubles us on the budget committee, and in quite a few instances where we've got instead of adjusting in a budget where it's here, we have to maintain that budget that we did last year in that area, or whatever that line item is, or whatever. And I think we can adjust that, and we'll need help to adjust that. And like I said, I don't have the answer to that. I brought it up last year, but I know y'all got a lot of things on your plate, and we have to specifically send you something, to do that. And we need to work on that because it kicks us in the teeth every budget year. And I don't like it. And it's not setting a good standard, I don't think, for our departments and our employees. Spend your budget so you can get it next year plus whatever else. You want money back. You know, don't spend it all if you don't need it, if you don't have to. And let's save some money for next year, for a rainy day, whatever. And let's build up our ending fund balance, and so we're a better community and a better county. But we need help there. I don't know what to send you, but we'll work on that. I'm just throwing that out there, saying if something we get into a word form, I need help from the finance director and the mayor on that, but something we need adjusting.
Commissioner Black.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to direct a few questions to Representative Sparks and Representative Carr. I noticed in the paper there was some legislation that y'all was going to be pushing in the upcoming section about the drug paraphernalia, and also the immigration bill that I think you'll be sponsoring that this time about immigration, something to do with immigration.
Commissioner Black, can you be a little more specific? And the reason I'm asking is there are no more major initiatives that I'm aware of dealing with the issue of illegal immigration in the state. The state has been at the fore nationally in providing state solutions in that regard, and quite honestly, we've been so successful we haven't been sued, which is a pretty good benchmark about how well you craft legislation, unlike some of our sister states. So if you can be specific, that would help.
The sheriff and you, I think it was, okay.
No, I think you're talking about the Sheriff Arnold doing the 287G program.
Absolutely.
That's correct. And the 287G program is basically a federal grant that he gets from Washington, and that really doesn't have it. There's no legislation required from the state, Commissioner Black. I know that Sheriff Darren Hall in Davidson County had that program from quite some time. And despite the media reports, I've got some data that he provided me, the success of that program from 2007, 2009. It's phenomenal what they did with that program and how well it worked. Unfortunately, whenever you have a program like that with federal grant money, the attorneys find it as a magnet to file an array of lawsuits. And the burden of the suits on the county, Davidson County at that point, became the pain wasn't worth the grief of having the program, so he let it expire. However, I do say this in Sheriff Arnold's defense as he goes through that, and I know he knows Sheriff Darren Hall because we've talked about this, there are a lot of things that Sheriff Arnold has learned watching Sheriff Hall go through this, and I'm sure that he's going to make a very good and wise decision about moving forward with adopting some of the changes that he would have done had Sheriff Hall had that opportunity. So I don't believe there's any legislation required from the state, is the short answer.
Commissioner Black, I know that I'll just share this experience with you. I was at a Laverne school recently. I won't say which school or the principal. I have respect for him, but I was asking him about needs that he's seen, and he was telling me, he said, we have a lot of folks that will, I guess the area has a lot of rental property. They'll have people that'll move in, maybe first month's rent's free. They move in, child's there for 2 months, child moves out. You know, you got folks coming in from Antioch. I think those areas need to be addressed. I think it'd be good if the school boards could require the principals when they register a student to look at the utility bill. You know, make sure these people live in Rutherford County. We shouldn't be paying for Davidson County's folks to be educated in Rutherford County, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to come to our schools because our schools are better in Davidson County. I mean, we got good schools, but they're not. This principal told me they're not required to look at utility bills and verify. I think it'd be good if they'd verify that. And I know school board members are watching now, but I think that's something that we should be requiring. That could help alleviate some cost. I forgot, what is it, $7,200, Commissioner Jordan, to educate a child now? What is it? About that? Okay. I mean, we need to address our costs because let's face it, the counties aren't going to have the money in 5-10 years. If we stay on the path that we're on, it's unsustainable. And that's what I was asking Governor Haslam, where we're going to be in 2 to 5 years as a state, let alone worry about the federal government. Let's worry about our state and the counties. The counties don't have the money to continue funding at the levels we've been funding in the past. On the question about the drug paraphernalia, one thing that was kind of insightful for me a couple of weeks ago, I met with a legal department and asked about current law that's on the books. And the guy said, and it was kind of neat, philosophical point he made. He said, Representative Sparks, he said, usually if something's bad, there's already a law on the books about it. And he was really being serious. So a lot of times we don't need to go invent new laws. And that's what legislators are guilty of, wanting to go invent laws. You know, we already have laws. Let's enforce what we got on the books. The drug paraphernalia law, that what he's telling me, legal's telling me, they should not be selling bongs and drug paraphernalia. As it is, they're in violation of state statute. So what I'm saying, if the DA is not going to enforce it, let the bureau boards like Chairman Keith Bratcher and these others step up to the plate and start yanking these licenses. That's the only way you get these guys' attention. They don't worry about legislation. They worry about making the money. That's all they worry about. And it's destroying families. It impacts the counties. You know, we're going to incarcerate those folks. There's a fiscal impact there. You know, if we really want to get into some issues that never is addressed, you know, is the fatherless rate. There's no lobbyist for that. You know, I've never met a lobbyist for that, and that's what I was sharing with y'all a couple weeks ago. One thing I applaud y'all for doing, this county commission, 2 good things I think that y'all have done. Well, several things, but one thing is you funded Motlow expansion. You know, applaud Mayor Burgess and the commission for stepping up, and Chairman Jordan for stepping up. That's one step in the right direction of affordable education. You know, it looks good over there. Smyrna stepped up with the site. Murfreesboro even stepped up, and y'all stepped up. The other areas is Jefferson Pike, Commissioner Black. I know you've been very passionate about that. Representative White has also. We met, Chairman Bratcher and I met with TDOT recently, and about a turning lane right there in front of Dollar General. May take 10 years to get it done, Commissioner, but hopefully it'll happen. The wheels of government often turn very slowly. You know, Jefferson Pike, I know the Senator Ketron may be able to speak to that. I know it's a slow process. They're fixing to get in a right-of-way acquisition. It's still probably 2015 before any dirt's turned out there. I know that both of them have been very aggressive on trying to get that funding and get those things done, and it's thankfully to this commission that's made it happen, and Commissioner Bratcher for being so assertive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment on one thing, Commissioner Sparks. I'm sorry, Mike. Representative Sparks, and that is that we have a county policy that has been in effect now for some time on what a principal, guidance department, et cetera, is supposed to do when a new student comes in. Now, your point is well made. We have not followed up on that in a couple of years now, and we have some new principals, and it's possible that we may need to do a little bit more than we have done in the past. As we have found out in the Public Safety Committee, of which Commissioner Farley is chairman, and Health and Ed, of which I am chairman, and others have found out that nothing makes anybody any madder than to pull into the line to let their child off for school, and there's a car in front of them letting out 3 children from another county. That really irritates people. And anyway, they're not paying their fair share, which you just pointed out. So I think we probably need to follow that up, but I want to assure you that those rules and regulations, utility bills and otherwise, are, as far as I'm concerned, in effect, and have been in effect now for, Mr. Mayor, help me out, but 3 or 4 years anyway, and because of the very problem that you just so eloquently pointed out. And I appreciate your time and your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank all of you for coming and sharing with us and participating. I have a few comments, and since you started off these comments, Senator Ketron, about the budget, some of these I hate to even mention, but anyway, I will anyway. I think it's a matter of duty. First of all, thank you guys for the first time in, I don't know whether it's 15 or more years, that we finally got an increase for the per diem for our state prisoners from $35. It's been that for almost an eternity. So we got an increase of $2. I don't know when we'll get another increase, but some of our other people have thought it would be reasonable, and I'll just put this out there for a thought, and as you hear this discussion, it would be nice just to go ahead and attach to that an annual cost of living adjustment so that we wouldn't have to fight over this and take the short end of the stick for the next 15 to 25 years. Secondly, you know that we're still in a continued difficult discussion about what is appropriate public notice. And in the state statute, there's not even a definition for a newspaper of general circulation. I wish that somehow, maybe you can't do this through legislation, maybe it has to start with through some study committee, but some of you might have the resources to identify how we could address whether we can clearly define what is an appropriate method of public notice. And I know some of the municipalities, and maybe that organization for the cities, is even suggesting that we use our government websites in lieu of newspapers for public notice. I think this is critical. If we don't do anything, maybe you could get TASER to do a serious study about this and may give some recommendations. It's really, really important, I believe. Thirdly, Mr. Carr. Okay.
Mayor, I just want to make sure I understand. So what you're looking for is a statutory definition of the term public notice.
Right now, we're all living by case law, and believe me, it is absolutely almost impossible to navigate case law on what is appropriate public notice.
So you're asking, it would help to have a statutory definition of that term. That's what
it would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thirdly, I know some of you have different views from what I have on this, but let me say this. All of us know how critical and important it is the sales tax collections that are occurring in our state of Tennessee, and we're heavily dependent on that. Our school systems are extraordinarily almost 100% dependent on that, except for the property taxes we put in to supplement that and to make sure we provide maintenance of effort. But in any event, this is an elongated process, but I just hope you guys can be a part of encouraging the discussion that's taking place about internet sales tax collections. And I know it's a difficult situation, but if you look at what's happening in our local retail establishments, the growth in their sales is less than 1%. I mean, it's very nominal there. And I think we're talking about equity here in that I think we're going to force many of those out because the growth in internet sales is double digits and more. So there are mechanisms that have already been developed, and it's already been legislated. The streamlined sales tax approach is already there that would allocate a tax to the jurisdiction from which it was purchased. So I just want you to think objectively about, you're talking about budget problems. I can tell you that if this was in place, there wouldn't be any budget problems. It would be an astounding amount of money, and I'm sure somebody's already calculated those dollars, and I know it appears to be an additional tax, but the rest of us are paying it when we shop locally, and I think we all should be responsible for paying an equitable tax on whatever types of goods we're buying. Just my observation. I'm not asking for legislation.
Real quick, if I can, Chairman, if I can. Just want to compliment Commissioner Jordan. You brought that up years ago, remember? And I argued with you. I took the opposite viewpoint. I happen to agree with you a little bit now. I'll admit maybe I was a little wrong, okay? We do need the revenue. And my understanding is at the end of the year, Mayor, you're supposed to, I bought 2 books off Amazon 2 weeks ago. I'm supposed to report that tax this year. Is that right? Or the
supposed to pay a use tax on that, but it's not happening. We know.
Yes, sir. Well, I think the governor had talked about that. But, geographically how we're situated, I mean, I've heard people want us to raise fuel tax. Well, if we raise the fuel tax, people are going to fill up in Franklin, Kentucky, Georgia, Huntsville. We'll lose revenue, so we got to be careful. But I just really want to compliment the Commissioner because you were very passionate about that, and I argued with you, and, I apologize for arguing with you, okay?
I'm glad this is on TV. Senator?
I'm glad we have that on record now.
I am too.
But, Commissioner, the agreement I think that the governor made with Amazon for the location to come here, we started collecting in 2014. So, so that my name was published in a newspaper along with the governor on something I purchased from our office at the legislature, but I still prematurely they put in the amount that I paid for the device, not the sales tax. So they said I owed $342 in taxes, which it was only $3.42. That was the amount that I paid, but I was glad to pay it immediately and make sure that was taken off. We will be receiving that from Amazon, and that is something that's on our Commissioner of Revenue and the Governor's plate to make sure that we try to capture that. That's something we've been working on for 10 years, even when Governor Wilder was there, and everybody's going, wow, we can't do that. We can't get the federal government to allow us to do that. But I think that chicken's coming home to roost now, that we're losing too much over the internet, and that needs to be coming back into our communities.
This is a specific request, and I'll have to get some language to you guys, but TCA 68-4-103, if someone wants to write that down. This seems to be very, very minor and simple, but you can't, over the last year or two, we've been facing with the responsibility of the county to bury indigent people. And our language allows us to budget for burial and or cremation, but there's some other language in 68-403 that only says persons to be buried at public expense. So I'm going to ask somebody to help us get this, broaden this, where when it's our responsibility, we'll have at least this additional option, which would be less costly. And most of the time, we still have to find out if there's a family that wants to take responsibility, but we've had a few too many of these, and it's our responsibility to take care of them under certain conditions. So that's a simple little request that somebody that with your legal staff can help us decide how to change some of the language in a couple of those paragraphs. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, regarding the public notices, I filed for 2 years in a row legislation that would clarify that. And when I did, out come the woodwork effect, as Senator Ketterton said, came the various different media personnel, from internet to radio to TV to newspapers, and it is incredible the amount of lobbying power they have, because it never even got out of the first round of the committee, the subcommittee. It never had the votes. I'll try it again. I'll be more than happy to give it another shot, but it's matter of fact, you and I probably need to sit down and talk about the specifics to try to make.
Well, maybe if you could just define a newspaper of general circulation, that would be a start.
We tried. Anyway, like you said, it's case law. And regarding the internet too, I just ordered or tried to order something from Apple, and we're going to be looking at this. I was talking to Senator Ketterton tonight. Going to talk to the comptroller about it and go from there. But Apple has been collecting sales tax for Tennessee for I don't know how long, but they don't pay Tennessee the sales tax. So we're potential fraud. I don't know. But if Apple's one company, and I'm sure there are other companies out there that are collecting sales tax for the state of Tennessee, but we don't get that sales tax money. So we're going to have the comptroller look into that. That may be an issue to tack on to what we've talked about here tonight with the sales tax.
Commissioners, Commissioner Schaefer, Commissioner Ely. Commissioner Schaefer. And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I would just like to mention the unfunded mandates, and I'm not going to talk about them, but I think it should be it should come out when those come down. I think even from the federal government down to the local as well as the state. I could use the example of came out of the Board of Education last year, about 4 years of math and another year of chemistry or physics, one or the other. And I'm not saying that's not good, but it required our county to get 4 more science teachers, 9 more math teachers. And that, when you put in the benefits, the Medicare, the Social Security, et cetera, the salaries and all that, we were talking in the neighborhood of $750,000 to $1 million for those teachers. I would like to see just I'd say a physical impact, where it's coming from, how it's going to be paid for when y'all pass something like that up there. And just to let us know, because we're probably pretty sure where we're going to have to find it somewhere, but at least it lets others know also.
Commissioner? I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee and the mayor and other commissioners to thank you all, thank our delegation for being here tonight. We appreciate your time tonight. Most importantly, we appreciate your relationship with each of us individually, as well as how you represent us at the state level. And I say this every year. I'll say it again. Anytime that I do either go to Nashville or I'm around people from the state capitol, they always talk about what a great delegation we have. So hats off to you all and to what you do, not only for us, but for the entire state. Thank you all very much. We have to finish the rest of our short agenda, but we appreciate your time this evening. This item, we have an appointment of Judicial Commissioner Sherry Hamlet. Do we have a motion? So moved. We have a motion. We have a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes. Next, we need to announce vacancy on a Conservation Board of Clarence Brandon. And any other business? Y'all have anything else? Mayor, is there any other business you have for us? Any other business for us tonight? Okay. Commissioners, thank you. I hope you had a wonderful holiday and move to adjourn.